All right, guys, we're going to start the program shortly. Some bad news out of Japan. Japan's former prime minister was just assassinated. Former prime minister, literally this is just being reported, was attacked while delivering a speech in the city of Nara. Is that how you think you say it?
Yeah, it sounds about right. I think he was supporting one of the parties.
Yeah, he was supporting one of the parties, and a Japanese citizen. Gun violence in Japan is very rare. A Japanese citizen used a homemade weapon, and the homemade weapon consisted of 2 metal barrels attached to a wooden board that was more than 1 foot long. In a surprise assassination, I guess all assassinations are surprise, in an assassination of the former prime minister of Japan. Now world leaders are responding and reacting to this assassination. That's pretty much like, this is as if, I don't even want to say it because I think you can get in trouble saying this stuff on microphone or social media. This is like if one of our past U.S. presidents.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, it's a similar political role.
It's the same.
Yeah.
The Ides of March have turned into the Ides of 2020, the Ides of 2021, and the Ides of 6-7 months of 2022. Judah Wickower and I, we have a good show lined up for you. We're ready to rock and roll, Judah.
Quiet on the set.
Good Friday afternoon, guys. I'm Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love Seville show. Thank you kindly for joining us live in Charlottesville, Central Virginia, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world. We're presented by Skooma Boutique Dispensary, the best dispensary in Charlottesville, a Skooma Boutique Dispensary with locations on the downtown mall and Ellwood Avenue. News just breaking now out of Japan. The former Prime Minister of Japan was assassinated, an hour ago? Very recently ago? Less than an hour ago? This is crazy news. The former Prime Minister of Japan, while on the campaign trail, not for himself, but in support of a political party in Japan, was shot, killed, assassinated, not even an hour ago, by a Japanese citizen. The citizen used a homemade weapon to kill the former prime minister. The homemade weapon was 2 metal barrels attached to a wooden board. The homemade weapon was more than 1 foot long. How do you sneak in a homemade weapon more than 1 foot long to assassinate the most recent former prime minister of a country?
Apparently it's not that hard.
This is like the Redcoats, or like Paul Revere, or like something that you would see from history, not something that you would see in 2022 in an innovative, civilized, colonized, well-protected country like Japan. But it happened nevertheless.
People are angry all over the world.
Surprised to see this. You now have leaders from everywhere, all over countries from everywhere, offering their condolences and support of Japan, the country, and the Prime Minister's family. Joe Biden said he was stunned, outraged, and deeply saddened to learn of the Prime Minister's death, and he said this is a tragedy for Japan and for all who knew him. Barack Obama called him a friend and longtime partner. You got a take on this before we get to the rundown?
I mean, I'd like to read more about it. I think at this point it's just tragic news. I mean, somebody clearly didn't like his his
His
policies
politics.
or his politics. And I think I remember reading that he was supporting, in his speech, he was supporting another politician. So,
Yeah, supporting a party in Japan.
yeah.
Well, welcome to the program. It's the Friday edition of the show. We have a number of topics we didn't get to yesterday. Yesterday's program was absolutely in fuego. Yesterday's show is archived on iloveseville.com and was one of the best shows we've done for a long time. One of the foundations of yesterday's talk show was this premise, this question. The question was, you posed it very well. Ask it again.
You're talking about...
Is there personal responsibility when it comes to landlords from a pricing standpoint?
Yeah.
That's what the question you
posed.
posed.
Let me reiterate that I'm not calling anyone out. I'm not...
You reiterated that yesterday.
Yeah.
You just asked a question. No one's judging you based on that question.
So the question is, if you're talking about housing affordability and skyrocketing rent prices on one hand, and talking about, and you've got people who are landlords, is there a disconnect?
Personal responsibility for maintaining price point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, not maintaining price point, but
For preserving, for protecting, for creating affordability.
yeah. If you were charging $1,000 a month last year, and your taxes went up $100, and everybody else is now charging $1,800 for rent.
Should you go to $1,800?
If you go to $1,800, that's like a $700 like pure profit over what you were making last year.
That's not true. Not pure profit, because the cost of goods, labor, everything else went up for year over year. Taxes. If your piece of property is in the city of Charlottesville, your assessment went up 12%.
The point is, they didn't go up $700.
No, it didn't. It didn't. And we talked about that yesterday, and I thought it was the basis and the premise for a fantastic talk show. I thought you did really well yesterday. I think the next topic we have to start asking ourselves is, how does everything's volatile right now. Anyone feel that way?
Yeah, we've had some major
Serious
shifts.
volatility.
Well, we've had major shifts in the last 2 years. We've printed way more money than was ever intelligent to print. We haven't. You can't print money without taxes.
And to Judah's point, a new report out today from the Federal Reserve finds that 75%, you heard me correctly, 75% of the $800 billion Paycheck Protection Program did not reach the right people.
And from what I gathered from that article, I didn't read the whole thing, but
I did.
I think it mainly had to do with companies getting the money and not passing it along to their employers.
No.
Employees.
That's not what this was
That's
about.
not?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes. The Here's some things that were unfair about the Paycheck Protection Program and the stimulus money that was coming in. You ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Let's just talk the stimulus money that was coming into families. If you didn't have your paperwork buttoned up, if you hadn't filed your taxes, you didn't get your money.
Yeah.
If you didn't have your physical address set up correctly with the IRS, you didn't get your money. The people that were getting the stimulus money
Were people that were able to afford
to withstand the COVID pandemic.
Well, they were also people, or more likely companies, that had the money to have lawyers on hand to make sure they had all those forms and whatnot.
Not lawyers, CPAs. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the people that got the stimulus money were the ones that had the infrastructure, the human capital, the resources, the source of the source in place to get the money. Those are the folks most likely to not need the money because they're able to afford the CPA, the sources of the sources. So the Fed today comes out with a report, and the report finds that 75% of the $800 billion Paycheck Protection Program did not reach the right people, whether it was the stimulus money or the PPP. So I start to show and ask you guys about volatility. You got volatility in fuel. You got volatility in inflation. You got volatility in Russia, Ukraine. You got the former prime minister of Japan that got assassinated less than an hour ago by a homemade weapon that was 1 foot long.
That time may be off. I think
I'm just talking about volatility. Mm-hmm. You got all these things collide at once, and people are like, what the hell is going on here? You got no cars. You got no chips. You got no chips for the cars. You got no bacon for your bacon, egg, and cheeseburger, or your bacon, egg, and cheese. Your gasoline is $5 one day, and it ain't dropping. I mean, it's constant volatility. And eventually, because it's human nature to be like, hey, what gives? Enough is enough. You throw your hands in the air and say, what the hell is going on? What the hell is going on? I'm curious to see if the next trend that influences the local market is this school bus crisis that's rising or being birthed. None of the jurisdictions have bus drivers. Not enough. None of the jurisdictions have enough bus drivers with CDLs. They're now introducing a new bus. It's more of a passenger van, and it seats 14 people. You know why?
Because they don't need any more seats than that?
You don't need a CDL to drive it. Now school bus driving is being pivoted to smaller vehicles where you don't need a special driver's license to drive them. And they're trying to appeal to the average Joes and the average Bettys as drivers. But that's still not working. You want to be in a passenger van with 14 asymptomatic kids this winter, driving around in tough, confined areas while they wipe their boogers on the back of your seat? How many people are going to do that? Is the next crisis to hit Central Virginia a crisis associated with transporting children and the lack thereof of transportation? Under the current Charlottesville public school plan, elementary school children will have to walk to school, not allowed to ride the bus, if they live within 3/4 of a mile of their elementary school. Middle school and high school kids will have to walk if they live within 1.25 miles of their school. They won't be allowed to ride the bus because there's no seats and not enough drivers. How many moms and dads are going to say, wait a second, let me understand something. The school is old, it's antiquated, the technology for learning at home is not great. A lot of teachers left during the pandemic because they got burned out. They were fearful of their health and safety. There are no bus drivers. My 8-year-old has to walk 3/4 of a mile to get to school, carrying their books in a backpack. What gives? Am I going to switch to private? And you know there's policy being considered now at the federal level where Youngkin is entertaining it now. I was having this conversation with my father. It's just in the consideration stages. Like Youngkin on his desk considering it. If you as a mom and dad aren't satisfied with your child's public school education, what's being considered now is the valuation of that public school education. They're going to put a dollar amount on it, and they're going to say to the parents, you're not happy with what you're getting here at the public school level? This is the dollar amount for your public school education. Here's the money, you can use it for private school. That's being considered at the federal level literally as we speak right now.
That will never pass.
Youngkin's considering it. This is the same Youngkin that went toe-to-toe with the critical race theory during his campaign. This is the same Youngkin whose entire campaign...
That was during his campaign.
His entire campaign was empowering parents. And Youngkin wants to be the president, or he wants to be considered for the ticket.
I would take anything from him with a grain of salt because
he has big plans.
Yeah. I don't think he cares about anything but getting into the presidential
seat. Wants to be on the GOP ticket.
Yeah.
So Youngkin is considering this. The entire campaign was empowering parents and returning the empowerment to parents when it comes to their school's education. We've said on this talk show many times, McAuliffe lost his campaign because he said parents should not have any say in their kids' schooling. BS.
Yeah, it was poor optics.
Terrible optics.
And a stupid thing to say.
Terrible optics. Take your kids' public school education, put a dollar amount on it, give a check to the parents for that dollar amount, and say you have to use it at private school or homeschooling?
It's an interesting idea, but do you really think it has legs beyond that?
I mean, my fear for that would be the destruction of the public school system.
Is that really, I mean, if...
That's what my fear is, because if you give parents a check and say, go use it for private school...
Where does that money come from? Are you taking it out of the schools that...
Oh, yeah. You're taking it out of the public schools. The public school funding is based on population.
And you don't think he's
from the state.
You don't think he'd get strung up for doing something like that?
Youngkin went toe-to-toe with the public school teachers already in the campaign and won. Youngkin's entire campaign appealed to suburban soccer moms. Suburban soccer moms that otherwise were voting D, were voting R, because he said to the moms, I want to give you the power again for your kids' public schools. He already went toe-to-toe with the public schools. You give the parents...
That doesn't mean he wins in every subsequent fist fight.
Jason Howard is watching the program. He's the king of Rio Road. He said, following the Supreme Court ruling regarding religious charter schools in Maine, Arizona, Arizona did that. $7,000 to parents for their choice of school. When you get $7,000 as a parent and say, use it for school, you're then opening up the private school option
for everyone.
For a lot more people.
It's not a bad idea.
For a lot more people. You're not just limiting it to the wealthy. You're opening it up to a lot more people. Because there's many people that may not be able to afford a $20,000 tuition.
Yeah.
But if that tuition is subsidized by a $7,000 or $10,000 payment, then they can do it. Because that's paid over the course of a year.
Interesting.
Arizona just approved the nation's largest school voucher system. Jason Howard sent us a link in the comment section of my personal Facebook page right now. Thank you, King of Rio Road. You're making the show better today, Jason Howard, as you did yesterday as well. But if you give parents the option to take their kids out of public schools and take the money that it would have cost to put the kid in public school and put him in private school, that would be the destruction of the public school system.
Yeah, in this case, maybe it's not such a bad thing. I mean,
what do you follow? You gotta back that up with some facts here, because you're about to anger some people.
You're basically saying everybody's going to get money to not go to public school.
If Youngkin approves it.
And you said that Arizona already has.
Yeah.
So how is the other end of that equation the fact that nobody wants their kids in public school? So if this is the end of public school, isn't that possibly a good thing? If public schools are consistently underperforming, and
not all of them.
Okay, well, who cares? The point is, if everybody wants money so they can send their kids to a non-public school, what is the argument for keeping public schools around?
Well, I will say this. By putting a value on the public school and saying to the mom and dads that you can take this dollar value and allocate it to any kind of school that you want, that's going to hold the public schools even more accountable.
Yeah.
It creates competition for school. It changes a public school from being a public utility to being a commodity.
But if they're already cash strapped and you're planning on taking money away from them and allowing people to send their children elsewhere, how are they ever going to become...
They'll never be able to compete if they lose the funding.
Exactly.
They would never be able to keep it. Or the flip side of the coin is.
So who cares if they have to become?
Or the flip side of the coin is this voucher system alleviates the population crunch on public schools, makes them less populated with students, which would allow them to perform better because the student-teacher ratios are better, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the very concerning aspect of this is the gentrification of education. And that's what this is. The gentrification of education. The public schools are going to be for those that can't afford the private school, even with the voucher system, the public school are going to be the poor of the poor.
Right. Well,
would be the poor of the poor. It would be essentially a cafeteria. You know the cafeteria when you went to school? You had the athletes over here. You had the folks in the Key Club here. Folks, the cheerleaders over here. You know what I'm talking about. The cafeteria wouldn't have cliques. It'd be the poor of the poor. That would be very concerning.
And that's another argument for just getting rid of the public schools altogether.
You're talking about more collateral damage coming from this pandemic and COVID. Here's another aspect of it.
I don't know if that's necessary. I think
this is a direct result of the pandemic. For 2 years, the students in public schools were performing behind their peers in the private schools because the public schools did not have the infrastructure or were so bloated with red tape that they could not turn the ship fast enough. The private schools did not have the same bloat.
I would like to see numbers beyond just the last couple of years and see if the public schools were doing that much better before the pandemic.
The question is Youngkin weighing this decision based on what's right for Virginia, or is Youngkin basing this decision on what's right for his presidential run potentially?
At this point, I don't trust him beyond what he wants to do for his presidential
run.
Wow,
your tune with Youngkin changed quickly. Was it the mandates out of the gates when he was elected first into office?
It was the mandates out of the gate. It was his stance against marijuana.
Youngkin is trying to hurt a lot of independent. I just had a conversation with Dave from SCUMA. Youngkin is trying to hurt a lot of independent cannabis entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so I've pretty much lost trust in him, and I've seen that he's clearly aiming for the presidency, and I feel like everything he's going to do is going to be in service to that desire rather than to the people.
Well, that's unfortunate. If that's the case.
If it is the case,
that's unfortunate. If that's the case. Oh, politics, man. I don't like seeing the wealth divide. I don't like seeing the educational divide. I don't like seeing the divide that's associated with stimulus money. I don't like seeing the divide that was created during the pandemic. I don't like the divide with big box stores being open during the pandemic where mom and pops were not.
Yeah.
I just do not like playing fields that are started unfairly from the beginning of the game. And that's what's happening. Are we surprised that there are very few African Americans in the city of Charlottesville? No, you shouldn't be surprised. Because the city of Charlottesville destroyed the African American neighborhood Vinegar Hill. So when you take away a neighborhood and you destroy it, you raze it, and the idea of urban renewal, you're taking away their homes and their businesses, their culture, their life, their churches, and their restaurants. And surprise, surprise, you walk around the city of Charlottesville and it's homogeneous and wealthy. There's always a cause and effect. If you do something today, it may not have the impact or influence, or you may not see the result tomorrow, but you will eventually. You print $800 billion in PPP and stimulus money. You might think that you're helping folks today, but tomorrow, the next day, the next month, the following year, the damage is red on the board. Well, this is the damage of printing money in COVID.
That has a lot to do with it, I think, but not all of it. This has been This has been coming since 2008, if not a long time before.
Travis Hackworth. Travis, I like when you watch the program. I really do. Travis Hackworth mentions this. Private schools will still be restricted based on capacity by code zoning, so it also creates competition among the private schools as well as public schools. Exactly right. He's exactly right. So what do you think the private schools are going to do? If a bunch of public school kids with vouchers come to them to go to the private schools, what do you think the private schools do, Judah? What's a business doing? A private school's a business. What's a business do there? What they do, viewers and listeners, put your answer in the feed. You got a bunch of public school kids and their parents potentially with vouchers in their hands trying to go to private schools. What are the private schools going to do? Put the answer in the feed. Who knows? I can tell you what they're going to do. What are they going to do, Judah?
I'm thinking about it.
What's your economist head say? John Blair, what are they going to do?
I say they raise their prices.
Of course they are.
Because they're getting free money.
They're going to raise their tuition because they have limited capacity and more demand.
I mean, that's basically UVA, right?
We're creating the freaking housing crisis here. We're creating the housing crisis here. There's limited seats at a private school.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're going to potentially flood those limited seats with a bunch of extra people with money in their hands that they didn't have to earn. Here's thousands of dollars. You didn't have to earn this? Well, I mean, I guess they earned it because they're taxpayers and they're paying taxes. And part of their tax dollars are allocated to schools. So perhaps you can say they earned it that way. But if this is a pass, if this is approved by Youngkin, here's checks. Here's free money, mom and dad. Your kid can go to school wherever they want, and here's an extra 7, 10, 16K to grease the wheels to help make that happen. You go to a St. Anne's Belfield, you go to a Covenant, you go to a Woodbury, you go to a Fork Union, a Tandem, you go to a Catholic school, Charlottesville Catholic, you go to a Renaissance school, they're going to have more applicants than ever. You think that they were flooded with applicants during the pandemic because public school kids were having to learn in the coat closet their ABCs, their 1, 2, 3s, right next to the mop bucket, because that's where the internet was performing the best, and Uncle Leo was taking a Zoom call at the breakfast table with his boss?
Oddly specific.
The private schools are going to boom.
And that's basically what happened. I mean, that's basically...
It happened during COVID.
That's basically our colleges in a nutshell. UVA.
I play squash. I'm not going to say who it was. Or he plays in the court next to mine from time to time. And we got talking about, he's a professor at UVA. And we got talking about the value of the university education. I said, it's expensive. He said to me, Jerry, UVA was always for the wealthy. College was always for the wealthy. It's always been this way. Professor.
Yeah.
And you know what? He's right. Certainly easier, right? To get there. Travis and Danville, just like IB schools, they end up with more stringent application processes and increased tuition to cover expansions to accommodate the influx. Exactly right. It's exactly right. If this happens, watch Arizona. You'll see Arizona become a divided educational ecosystem. Public schools populated with lower income families, and the rest headed to private institutions. And a generation of students will feel an educational divide.
I mean, would you argue it's not already like that to some extent?
It's already like that. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. What would you do?
I would get rid of the public schools and make all schools private, and that way everybody...
What would happen to the teachers? What happened to what would you do with the buildings? You'd repurpose the buildings into housing, studio apartments? The schools?
Or sell them to people that...
You're going to sell 1960-year-old Buford Middle School to somebody? Who's going to buy Buford Middle School? 62-year-old at middle school. No crappy roof, bad HVAC, no ventilation, dark, doesn't have good breathing capabilities. Yeah, there's a demand for a 1960-year-old Buford Middle School. If you get rid of the public schools, Judah, man, that's so much to unpack. That's not going to happen in our lifetime. I know crazier things have happened. I never would think that we would be told by the government to stay at home and not support the businesses that we love.
I mean, if we're arguing that nobody wants to go to public schools and everybody wants to send their kids to...
No one is arguing that.
Okay.
I have never said no one wants to go to public school. I've never said that.
But
Matthew Gillikin, who watches this program
matter-
from time to time, is a passionate public school supporter. His wife a teacher in the public school system.
Okay.
He would never send his kids to private school, even with the voucher system. And that's just me crystal balling. I don't know for sure. He's a passionate public school supporter.
Okay.
It's an interesting topic, though. I mean, eventually the parents are going to be like, you're going to make my kid walk to school, and now you're going to make, they're just going to be fed, they're going to be fed up. Two topics we didn't get to yesterday. One of them kind of not worried us, but very much concerned us. The two UVA fraternities getting kicked off grounds.
That happens. I mean, when you...
Did you read what they got kicked off grounds for?
It's hazing. I mean, what else was it going to be for?
But they're very, I went to UVA. It was a Phi Kappa Psi, the fraternity right at the end of, when you're going down Rugby Road, the Mad Bowl. The fraternity right at the end of the Mad Bowl, the iconic one, was a Phi Psi. I got hazed. I did some hazing personally myself of pledges.
Not surprised.
I got hazed. But the fraternities that got their charters pulled, they were doing hazing that we weren't doing. Hitting people with coat hangers. Hitting students with coat hangers. Throwing eggs at their face while they're blindfolded.
Yeah, some guy got hit in the eye with an egg.
With an egg.
And then asked to be taken to, I think he asked to be taken to the hospital.
And they said no.
Yeah.
Oh, good friends you got there, bud. Let's join a fraternity where you're going to have friends for life. They're going to haze you. They'll beat you with a coat hanger. They're going to throw eggs at your face while you're blindfolded, close to blind you. You're going to get hit in the face by the egg, asked to go to the hospital, and your friends are going to say no. They're then going to put all your pledge class, 18 of you, in a tiny bathroom and have every single one of you smoke cigarettes in this tiny bathroom while you are confined to it for an extended period of time. Friends for life. Frat. That literally is what happened.
Yeah.
That literally is reported in the Cavalier Daily. Scott Aaronworth sent us that story. That literally is what happened. Two fraternities that got kicked off at a UVA have to wait 4 years before they could recolonize.
I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Don't hit people with coat hangers.
Yeah.
Don't throw eggs at their face while they're blindfolded.
I was briefly in a fraternity that had just come out of something like that, and it was getting restarted by a small number of people, and it was great because they knew their limits. They knew, well, not just knew their limits, but they were decent people, and I never was afraid that I would have to put up with something like that.
Yeah, I don't think you would either. You wouldn't put up with that. Travis says companies get new market tax credits, in some cases historic tax credits depending on age, to rehab those schools for housing, which often is not always a bad thing. It would help address in some small measure affordable housing. Absolutely it would. You take Buford and you chop it up into 500 square foot affordable studio apartments.
Oh, so now you think it's a good idea?
Do you see Buford being chopped up and sold to somebody?
If it's sold, it's definitely not going to be kept as is.
No, it's not. Do you see someone even willing to buy a 62-year-old school?
Do you see somebody willing to buy a old-ass mall?
A mall?
Somebody's always willing to tear something down and put something else in its place.
I'd say there's some differences between Fashion Scare Mall and Buford Middle School.
Not if you're going to tear them down and build
Fashion
something else.
Scare Mall had tenants and income in play when the man bought the building. I was there at the courthouse steps. It was something over $20 million in the auction that he bought Fashion Scare Mall for.
Okay.
They had tenants in place. The building was a little bit more taken care of. You make a good point. I'm not hating. I'm just saying that, like, I don't think the market for 60-year-old schools is a really red-hot market right now.
Yeah, well,
And eventually they're going to have
nobody thinks it would.
Eventually
someone
they're going to
would
have to
buy it.
convert that school to the tax roll for the jurisdiction, and paying taxes on land and property and that large is going to be astronomical. I mean, Johnny Dewberry is paying $65,000 a year for taxes of the Dewberry Hotel. I would imagine Buford, if it's converted to a privately held piece of real estate owned by a citizen, it's going to be more than 65 G's a year in taxes for that.
But they wouldn't just let it sit there.
They couldn't.
Yeah, if they've got money pouring out of their pockets, or they're just playing stupid. But we know that's not going to happen. If somebody bought that property, they wouldn't buy it for the building; they would buy it for the land.
Yeah, they'd buy for the value is the land. The value is that these schools are strategically placed around the city to maximize efficiency for citizens and parents. Yeah, the land is the value. 100% agree with you there. Yesterday, we highlighted briefly that a new Sheetz is opening in northern Albemarle County off Airport Road. I don't know if you've noticed this, but this is something that Judah and I have noticed. You want to know the food and beverage businesses that are opening in Charlottesville and Albemarle County? Wawa, Sheetz, Chick-fil-A, Chipotle. Which brands in food and beverage are opening at a greater clip or frequency in Albemarle County than Wawa, Sheetz, Chipotle, and Chick-fil-A? Why is that? Why do you think that's happening? I can tell you why. The volatile nature of the macro and micro economy. Locals don't have the cash position, or may not want to risk the cash positions on balance sheets to open restaurants right now in such a volatile climate. Chick-fil-A, Wawa, Sheetz, Chipotle, that's a piece of cake for them. Have you seen the Chipotle on the UVA corner recently? Chipotle completely reinvented and reimagined that former location, which was home to the College Inn at one time. 977-2710, that phone number burned into my brain. The phone number for College Inn kept me alive at the University of Virginia. Chipotle spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not $1 million plus, on reimagining the old College Inn location. Chick-fil-A completely rebuilt a Burger King in Barracks Road. Sheetz is opening a new location from scratch off Airport Road. Wawa is converting a Hardee's on 5th Street Extended. Warren Buffett said, when people are scared, you get greedy. And when people are greedy, you be scared. Right now, people are scared. And the big brands are getting greedy and trying to capture market share. Hence the multi-unit expansions of Chick-fil-A, Wawa, Sheetz, and Chipotle in this market. And speaking of Chipotle, they just launched a $50 million venture fund. The whole point of the venture fund is to find the future of food.
I would be curious.
Chipotle's a tech play right now. Uber is not a transportation company. Uber is a technology company.
For anyone out there, I would look into the connection between Chipotle and a company called BCG. If they're behind this this push, I would be extremely leery.
Free Enterprise Forum and Neil Williamson has two stories that are important. Sheetz in Ruckersville is undergoing a redesign soon. That link is in the comments section, or you can find it on my Facebook page, or you can find it on the freeenterpriseforum.com. And for what it's worth, another Wawa is opening in the area, this one on US 29 and 33 at Ruckersville, Virginia. Wawa goes to the Board of Supervisors on Tuesday night. So, Judah, during COVID, during the pandemic, during an economic crisis, there was a recession, back-to-back quarters of bad news GDP during the pandemic. We expect to be in a recession right now with back-to-back quarters of crappy GDP. Wawa opened on Pantops. Wawa's opening on US 2933 in Ruckersville. Neil just let us know. Wawa is going to open in the Hardee's 5th Street Extended. Sheetz is opening Airport Road. Chick-fil-A Barracks Road. Chipotle on the corner. They're expanding. Warren Buffett, when people are greedy, you be scared. When people are scared, you be greedy. And Chipotle is not a burrito company, a taco company, a burrito bowl company. It's a technology play. They just invested $50 million into a venture fund to figure out the future of food. And the venture fund is literally focused on how technology can drive down overhead and make the customer experience more pleasurable. Here's a good example. Chipotle, influenced by Uber, created a very robust app for people's phones. You order your Chipotle through your phone, through your app, ahead of time. And then you go into Chipotle and pick up the food and you don't have to wait in line. Chipotle has a special section of the restaurant for customers to pick up their food. That way the people who are waiting in line don't have to see this person walk in and get their food right away and wait in line. Or the person that had their food ordered ahead does not have to wait behind the people that are ordering in person right then. It's efficient. Robots, kiosks, smartphones, and digital screens are the future of restaurants. And Chipotle, Wawa, Sheetz, Chick-fil-A will lead the charge. They will lead the charge. You go to a Wawa and you order a made-to-order sandwich, you don't talk to anyone. You do it through a screen, and then you pick it up at a window. Jason Howard, King of Rio. Corporate restaurants have not only a larger bankroll than a local business, but a larger label pool to draw from. Wegmans isn't a restaurant, but when it came to town, I want to say 50% of the positions were filled by existing employees transferring. I would imagine large restaurant companies have a similar advantage. Someone who wants to relocate or wants to get a promotion will move to that new location. 100% true. Great comment, once again, Jason Howard. If I had my sound box over here, I'd give you the round of applause. I call it the Wegmans effect. The Wegmans effect, for the most part, was incredibly positive on Charlottesville and Central Virginia. But the Wegmans effect had one very real negative consequence. And Wegmans, because it was offering benefits and a more set schedule and better pay and better hours, Wegmans took a lot of the A and B players from local restaurants away from the restaurateurs, and they hired them. And the local restaurateur was left with C and D players or no players at all. You go to Wegmans and you see a lot of former servers, front of the house and back of the house people. It's because they paid well. They had good benefits, a better quality of life, some health perks, and less weekend and night work. Anything you want to add?
Not to that.
Okay. A couple more topics I want to get to, and then I want to get to anything else that you missed. We'll get to the comments too, guys, that are coming in. Give us some thoughts and comments in the feed. I'll relay it live on air. I found this fascinating. As inflation rises, and I think we may, I'm knocking on wood here, I think inflation has plateaued. I think inflation has plateaued. You're starting to see some KPIs. I mentioned this 2 or 3 weeks ago. that they were starting to show some early stages, and now they're starting to come in. But I'll save that. I don't want to hex it. This is a fascinating statistic, though. As inflation ravages the world, our country, our commonwealth, our region, and our fair city, the gift cards that we have in our possession are becoming less and less valuable. More than half of Americans, it's estimated, have unused gift cards totaling an average of $116 per person, according to a survey by personal finance website Bankrate. If you need a reason to finally spend the money on your gift cards, consider rising inflation, which has reduced your gift card value by roughly 13% since 2009, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. A $100 gift card issued in May of 2019 would only retain $87.61 of its spending power if redeemed today. That's based on CPI data. Gift cards. Remember during COVID, folks were selling gift cards as a way to get through COVID?
Yep. Businesses, retail and
restaurants in particular.
Restaurants, yeah. Because if you buy a gift card now, it'll help us get through this time, and we'll still be around when you eventually want to come back and use it.
Yeah. Use the gift cards. Mm-hmm. You've got them sitting at home. They're literally losing value as I'm speaking right now. I found that fascinating. Last topic for me. Actually, that was my last topic. Judah's brain. Quick hitters from the notebook that we missed that you want to cover.
Oh, man. Let's see. I mean, what did we have yesterday?
So you're good. You're good.
Sure.
Man, I cannot believe that. Not that I really knew who he was or anything, but the former Prime Minister of Japan was assassinated 90 minutes ago by a citizen in his country with a homemade weapon that was over a foot long.
I think the surprising thing is that how often do we, in today's world, hear about major political figures just getting
That's my point.
shot?
This is like Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, a guy is angry with a former president of a country, builds a homemade weapon that's two pieces of wood, two metal barrels, and a piece of wood that's a foot long, and kills the former president of the country, prime minister. That's Abraham Lincoln shot in the Ford Theater. Is it any different?
Maybe a little.
How? Tell me.
I mean, the guy wasn't currently the prime minister.
John Wilkes Booth. I mean, he was the former prime minister. I understand Abe Lincoln was the president at the time when JWB popped him at the Ford Theater. But when's the last time a country's president or prime minister has been assassinated?
I mean, it was definitely slightly more recent than Lincoln.
I mean, obviously you got JFK. But it just doesn't happen. Let's get to comments as Judah looks that up. Kevin in Waynesboro, Wegmans has more chefs on staff than the Boar's Head in the Boar's Head Resort. I bet you that's true, man. I bet you that's true. You're right, Kevin. He was the former prime minister. He was. He was one prime minister removed. He's not the active one. You're 100% right on that, Kevin Yancey. Neil Williamson said Japan had 10 gun violence crimes last year. And that's another point that we have to emphasize. There's very little gun crime in Japan. This is not like our country where every week you're fearful of the next mass shooting. I mean, what was the last one? July 4th, Highland Park, Chicago? Some dude on a rooftop just chooses to mow people down for no reason? What the hell?
Yeah.
Such psycho craziness out there.
And then you can add the insanity of the kids' parents basically helping him get a gun.
Yeah. Right? Japan has no gun violence, and its former prime minister just got assassinated by a homemade weapon that's over a foot long. Guys, this is like In the Line of Fire with Clint Eastwood, except Clint Eastwood, the security service, what's the guys that protect the president? What are they called?
Secret Service.
The Secret Service guy didn't save him. Mm-hmm. A homemade weapon that's a foot long. Jesus. 2022. Get better. Please, 2022.
2022 looked at the last couple of years and said, hold my beer.
2022. What the hell are you doing, 2022?
James Caan died recently. Sadly.
Didn't Carlos Santana have some kind of issue too? I'm pretty sure Carlos Santana had some health issues. He's spotted in Rochester after collapsing on stage during performance. Passed out on stage. Carlos Santana. Love Carlos. Love you, Carlos. Get better, Carlos. Make sure you drink that water, Carlos.
Heat exhaustion.
Yeah, drink that water, Carlos. Oh, that's the show. Anything you want to get in? Are you good?
I'm good.
This is the weekend. It's the freaking weekend, man. Judah Wickower and Jerry Miller, the I Love Seville show. We wear our hearts on our sleeves here. We wear our hearts on our sleeves while doing this show. We work hard for you. I sincerely mean that. Liz Farmer, thank you for watching the show. I just invited you to like our page. Please accept that invite, Liz Farmer. For Judah Wickower, I'm Jerry Miller. It's the I Love Seville show presented by Scuba Boutique Dispensary. We will see you Monday at 10:15 a.m. with Real Talk with Keith Smith. See you guys later. Take care.